in building relationships. So that's kind of in a nutshell what Path Forward Utah does. And Carrie's been a great advocate on Path Forward Utah in having some of the hard discussions on bringing people, making more awareness to some of the issues our country is going through. And Pastor Rod Hall and Joe Carey. So Joe Carey is part of Path Forward Utah. He's going to be moderating today for us, and I'm going to let him introduce the panelist as he comes up. But first, Joseph Carey, he's state school board for Weber County and teaches a professor in the media department in Inside College. And just, it's been wonderful knowing Joe for the last 7 years, and an incredible person. So we're excited to have him ask all the interesting questions. And actually, I didn't say one more thing about Joe. His mother, and I wish she thought she couldn't come tonight, but escaped North Korea. And so they have in their family a lineage also, as many people that will on our stage tonight, people that have came from other countries where the freedoms, they haven't had the freedoms that we have in America. And so Joe has that heritage too of having his ancestors having lived in North Korea and knowing the privilege it is to be an American.
So when I heard this was in Salem, I thought I was going to Massachusetts. I did not know there was a Salem, Utah. And yeah, but this is Carrie's district. I'm glad to be here. The first time I've been in Salem. So privileged to be here. I just want to take the time to recognize some people in the audience, if that's okay. One, we have Jenny Earl. She's on the state school board. She's from District 1. And I know where District 1 is because it's the district above mine, and I'm in Weber County. So she's right bouncing up there against Idaho. And I just wanted to thank her for taking the time to make this trip down to Salem to be here tonight. It really does say a lot about her. And also, we have Rod Hall and his wife here with us tonight. Rod, if you could stand up. Rod is a candidate in District 3. That is the district right below mine in Davis County. So, Rod, thank you for coming tonight. And I think I can do this. Carolyn, can I ask you to stand? So, Carolyn, you're I want to say superintendent for American Preparatory Academies across the state, and thank you for opening up your school and allowing us to do this here. So thank you very much. Oh, sure. Anyone? Hello? Testing, testing. So I just wanted to take 1 minute just to share something about me, because when I was asked to moderate this panel discussion tonight, I was like, wow, that's far, because I Google mapped it, and I said, that is a long drive. And there's plenty of places I can go to Ogden, in Weber County, without making the drive down to Salem. But when I saw the topic for tonight on American principles and how they benefit our students, I had to accept that. And let me just build on something that Jamie had said, which was, when my mom was 9 years old and the communists invaded her country, which we call today North Korea, her parents literally came into the bedroom and said, grab what you can, we're leaving with your uncle, and we're going to make our way down south. And it wasn't a very long walk, but in that short distance, it would be the last time that my mother saw her father. The communists stopped the party and they took him away, and she never saw him again. And I don't know what happened, but I know that my mom was imbued with this sense that education came before everything else. And it wasn't just because education allows us to maybe get better employment or better job opportunities. She recognized that education was the foundation for a renaissance in ourselves, that it allowed us to extend beyond who we were. And so my grandmother, who lived with us, would always say, you can skip a meal, but you can never skip school. And we had to go to school my brother, only person I know, had perfect attendance, never missed one day of elementary school, high school. I wasn't that student, but he was. And I just want to say that we need those principles because they open doors and opportunity beyond our own ability to understand it. So I am pleased to be here to moderate tonight. I'm going to invite the panel, if you could come up and just sit down in the chairs. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves, so please. I want you to know I took the time to call all the panelists today. I know most of them, but I wanted to really hear more about their stories before tonight, so the questions were more informative. And what I thought would take a total of maybe an hour ended up taking all day. So just fascinating stories, fascinating people, and really privileged to be here tonight. So Congressman, we'll start with you, and then if you just go down the line and spend just a few minutes introducing yourselves.
Hi, my name is Burgess Owens. I've been at Utah for 10 years now. Followed my 6 kids out who went to school at BYU and UVU. And when they decided not to come back east, what's the dad supposed to do but follow them, right? So the greatest decision I've ever made. I'll just say this, my background, I played in the NFL for 10 years. Started a nonprofit working with at-risk kids. Now Congress is going my 3rd term. And of all the things I've ever done in terms of legacy, it will not be any of those I just mentioned. It'll be how can we disrupt the education system. So intergenerationally, we have from this point on every child having a chance to get the education that this school allows them to get. I love that. Renaissance of the soul, basically. I'm going to paraphrase that. But that's what education is, and I'm all in. I want to thank you guys for the values that you have here that draw so many people to this great state. And the fact that we can continue to lead in so many ways, and education will be one of them. So thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carlos Moreno. I came from Venezuela in 2009 as an international student. During that time, the Venezuelan socialist regime started changing a lot of stuff. And I decided to say, okay, if this is happening right now in the country, I'm gonna go to the United States to learn English and and educate myself better, and come back to the country. I had the opportunity, but nothing changed so far. The Venezuelan regime started killing college students in the streets in Venezuela, and that was devastating for so many people. One year they killed 100 college students, daylight. And in the streets you can see horror. You can see the videos in internet if you want to watch it, but I started an organization called Venezuelan Students Abroad to denunciate the human rights violation here in America. I was invited to the Congress, to the Senate, also to the White House to denunciate the human rights violations. During that time, I was in Washington, D.C., waiting for a meeting, and I wake up in the morning, and I took my phone, and I got more than 1,000 messages on my phone. So what? And I saw my dad. From the 1,000 messages, 500 from my dad. And I called my dad, and my dad said, Carlos, just last night, the president of the Venezuelan parliament in national TV charged you treason and conspiracy. And it's between 18 and 30 years in jail. That forced me and my wife and I to apply for political asylum. And that's why I'm here today. And I'm proud to be American.
Hi, that was a great introduction. My name is Lucy Shirisia. I teach here in Utah. I'm a professor in social sciences. Probably my history is my mother, she is from Kenya. I was actually born from Kenya as well. We moved when I was about 4 or 5 years of age, and my mom would always say, this is the land of the great, and there's great opportunity here. And throughout my life, I always heard that a lot. I think every country loves America except for Americans. But I always just knew that I could do whatever I wanted to, and teaching was a big thing always on my list. I was raised in DC area, and that society actually teaches you exactly opposite, that you can't. But luckily, I had that cultural influence of my mother's culture where it was pretty much go out there and make your dreams come true. And as I have lived in the United States and sought out opportunities, whether it's education, traveling, whatever it may be, I haven't felt anything that's held me back. And I'm grateful for America. I'm grateful for a place where we can be able to be free and do whatever we please. And I like to be a part of organizations that help and support that and help people recognize that we live in a great nation, America.
Hi, I'm Cari Bartholomew. I was born here in America, but I come from the hardest circumstances that you can imagine. I grew up in the foster system. I aged out of foster care. But for me, I had these amazing teachers, and these amazing teachers taught me to believe in myself. And that teaching me to believe in myself is something that stuck with me and made me want to be kind of a light in the room. And so for me, when I look at our children, I want that for them. And when I look around and I see hard things coming, when I see kind of a sense of nihilism coming for our children, I work really, really, really ridiculously hard at getting friends to come out from all over almost Idaho to talk about it, because I think that it's important that we hear a different perspective. I love this country. This is the only country where you can start with absolutely nothing and become something more. I mean, maybe you can do that in other countries, but I know that in America, it's kind of easy. And that if you make the right choices, then doors open for you. So I love this country.
Hello, I'm Savitri Judd. I was invited to speak on this panel through Cari. We connected over views that we have the same, and my history and what she's about and how it connected to her and what she's doing today. I would say Carlos is a great example of what my father was. My father was an educated person who applied to a university. In his country, it was Guatemala, and there wasn't a university in Guatemala at the time. And when he graduated high school, he applied to attend a university in Mexico, and he got a scholarship, and there was a 2-year wait. So then there was a friend of his, an American friend of his, that said, "Why wait? Apply to the United States of America." And my dad thought for a while, why would I? I have a privileged life here. And I say privileged because, so it'd be my 5th great grandfather was president of Guatemala, and he was a good president, not a dictator. He was a good president. I could go into his history, but maybe if it coincides with one of your questions, then I would go into it. But he took a chance, and he did it, and he was awarded a full ride scholarship to come to Utah, Logan, Utah. And this is where I was born. So my father got his master's degree there. And when he graduated, he said, okay, let's go back to Guatemala. And he took his family back to Guatemala. And we did live a life of privilege, but we were so accustomed to this beautiful country where we breathe clean air, where I can drink water from a tap, not having to boil it or worry about these common sense things that I would say most people take for granted, but we didn't, and we realized that at a very young age. And there was an incident that prompted my father to make the ultimate decision to come back to the United States, and that's what he did. We applied to come back here to the United States, and he was granted that permission, and that's where our American dream began. And this is why I love the United States of America.
So what I'd like to do is this. I'm going to pose a question to the panelists. They'll have 3 minutes to just answer and share whatever they want to that's responsive to the question. And then if another panelist wants to add to that narrative, you'll be given 1.5 minutes. And at the end, Jamie, if it's okay, I'd like to reserve maybe 20 minutes at the end just for the people in the room to ask questions. Looks safe. Yeah. So the people in the room, they can ask questions. No. So let's do that. Does that work for everyone? So I want to start with Congressman Owens, not because he's a member of Congress, but we crossed paths originally in Philadelphia, and his Oakland Raiders embarrassed my Philadelphia Eagles. So I spent most of the day trying to think of the hardest question that I could start. No, but I do have one question, Congressman, I guess more serious. We have a former president of the United States on trial in New York. And regardless of whether you think the trial is fair or not fair, there's something unusual and disturbing about a former president being on trial for a crime that many struggle to articulate what it is. Have we crossed a path here in American politics? Because one of the great American principles and traditions is politics is here, but then we move on, right? Win or lose, we go to the next stage. And it seems like now we're abandoning that. And now it's, if we can't beat them on the electoral field, we're going to try to put them in jail. Did we cross a Rubicon here?
I would say we'll know in November. This country has been remarkable in terms of resiliency, what our DNA is. And our DNA basically comes down to 4 tenets that we've always believed in. It always brings us back from the abyss, back from disastrous things happening, because we just never lose hope. Faith, family, the free market, and education. That's been the foundation of who we are. Over the last decades, we've had the slow march of Marxism in our school system. And that system, by a group of cowardly termites, they go after our kids. They teach them not to believe in faith, family, the free market, and education. If you get away from that, we don't understand what fairness is. We don't understand what the empathy is. We lose our cultural soul. I think the last few years has been a wake-up call for many Americans. We live in a little freedom bubble. We now are out of that freedom bubble because of COVID, BLM riots, October 7th, we realized something needs to change. So I have so much faith that these are the best of times, because we have more people being engaged now than I ever have seen before. And what Americans do when we find something in common, no matter what side of the aisle we sit on, we find something that we find in common, we will work toward that. The most powerful 3 words in the history of mankind is we the people. And what's happening right now across this country, we the people are speaking to each other. We're saying, it doesn't matter what I used to vote, how I used to think, something's wrong right now. We should never have what's going on our borders, what's happening on our border. We should never have the inflation where we're losing our dreams of anything moving forward. We never have the divisiveness where people are taught that they are oppressed or oppressors. It is one of the most demeaning conversations to me, look at me, my color, say I am an oppressed. Now, my parents' generation, those were fighting words for them, because they believed in meritocracy. They believe that we can prove ourselves to be equal to any man or woman, any other race, because we can work ourselves to that point of respect. So to say the least, we're going through tough times. The blessing, I want to say it, this is very bottom line. Heavenly Father has a perfect plan, my friends. I think that Utah and our values we have here, that we still have here, that we'll be fighting for, will be on the cutting edge of that. So let's continue to fight for what we have been given by our ancestors. I say ours not because I'm a Utahn, but it is what's going to lead our country out, because we know how it looks to have an embracive culture that believes in becoming a more perfect union. That's who we are. And so let's not lose that. Let's be proud of it. Let's stand boldly. And education is where we teach our kids what that looks like. So I'm excited about that process.
Thank you. And Carrie, I saw you nodding when the congressman was giving his answer. So I just want to ask you something very similar. Congressman Owens talked about this change, generational change, in how his parents viewed opportunity and maybe the way the current generation doesn't. Do you agree with that? And if so, what caused that change?
This one, yeah, okay. We've stopped thinking in terms of gratitude. we've become an entitled nation. I think one of the big things that I've noticed in a lot of curriculums is a push towards pathos and ignoring logos, which means that we are leaning into our emotions and ignoring logic. So I think that that's huge, and am I not at the microphone? I think that that's huge in that if we only go with emotion, then we tend to believe that we're only right and we're at this heightened place where we can't talk to each other. Whereas if we think in terms of logic and we think in terms of reason, then we can reach across the aisle. And I think that's the big thing, is that divided we fall seems to be the goal.
Lucy, let me ask you this. You're a professor at Salt Lake Community College. You've done a lot of research, and I'm not going to pretend that I know too much about it, but I see that one of your areas of interest and study has been attachment theory, how people develop bonds between each other, not only within a family, but within a culture. We have in our schools record numbers of students who are diagnosed as depressed, as anxious, as this feeling that they are being overwhelmed. What is it in our society that's causing this to this generation that has unlimited possibility and opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it goes down to parenting. What's going on in our nation when it comes to basic understanding of emotions or of self? It used to be taught at home, but now, because a lot of that's not happening due to technology and due to just children not having that attachment, as you mentioned, a lot of their information is coming from schools and from TikTok or any of those media outlets. Unfortunately, there's a disconnect of understanding that if you understand yourself well, have self-awareness, have emotional regulation, use critical thinking, then make good decisions. Then do you want to be part of society that is created for you? One of the biggest things I always try to remind my students is everything in our society is socially constructed, meaning people are making rules, you're just simply following them. And it's up to you to decide what you want to follow, what you don't want to follow. But when we live in a nation where we're so far away from self-awareness because there's so many things that distract us, you can see why we're not interested in making a better nation or even having unity or working together. But ultimately, it always comes back to family, comes back to, I know even dinner time, we think that's a little thing, but it was a time where people could connect together. And that's taken away, and people are using other forms, whether it's watching a movie while having dinner or whatever it may be. So that lack of connection, we're seeing it happen at home. And of course, that translates to the community and the culture as a whole.
Carlos, let me ask this question to you, because when we spoke earlier, it's kind of along the lines of what Lucy said, which is, well, we're free to follow these rules or not. But when we speak up, when we take a stand, there is a real risk, even here in the United States with cancel culture, that you wake up and you don't have a job. The friends you thought you had, they're no longer there. I was in a WinCo maybe 3 months ago, and I'm in WinCo, and I hear somebody really yelling, like just angry yelling, and I'm like, wow, what is this person so upset about? And I turn around, they're yelling at me. They're upset at me for something that I don't know if I did or didn't do, but there was no conversation. It was just vitriol. And I thought, wow, where does that come from? I believe we should be passionate about education. It involves our kids. So we should be passionate. But Senator Kennedy, a Democrat, a Republican from Louisiana, they were talking about this, if you hurt me, if you, put our guy on trial, we'll put your guy on trial. If you do this, we'll do that. And the host of the program said, well, you're not suggesting that two wrongs make a right, are you? And Senator Kennedy said, two wrongs never make a right, but it makes things even. And I thought, well, he's right. But you, in Venezuela, you paid a price because you raised your voice. Where do you find that courage to do that, despite knowing what those costs may be?
Was hard for me when you have to make a decision that your family and gonna be in danger or something like that. Always take deep conversation with yourself, you know. But I had what you said. I had a really good family, and Congressman Owens said, family. I had my dad, and I talked to him. I said, Dad, if I speak about this, and everybody's pushing me to do it, like my family and students, you know that this is no. I don't want to come back anymore to the country. That's gonna be the price. And my dad told me something very special that moment. He said, like, Carlos, you are in the United States of America, where people from other countries dream to born, and I know that you're going to experience some miracles if you stand for the truth. That's why having strong family values like courage, forgiveness, love, help our society to make the right decision, especially during this moment where you have a political ideology who just teach hatred and try to change the culture of this country. And one more to answer your question, and one more comment. I remember when the 9/11 happens, I was in Venezuela. I was waiting to go to my mission. That was in September, and my mission was in December. And I was working in a hospital as a cashiering. And I was working, counting the money, taking everything fine. And I didn't hear anything. Everything was silent. In a hospital where so many people, so many things happen, everything was silent. I was like, because I have protection for being in the cashiering, and I saw the TV outside, and I saw when the 9/11 terrorist attack happened, and everybody imagine having 400 people in that place, silent, crying, and with what happened in America. I remember that we was like 3 minutes in silence, people crying, and nobody can believe that. But about that terrible experience that we had in America, the most beautiful message that this country sent to the people is that you stand united for your country, and you even in the worst moments in your history, this country has been united because their citizens feel a strong love for this country, and this is the only thing they're gonna finish this attack, because this is not usual. This is going to the mind of our kids, to the mind of our population, and we need to be strong in our values, family, faith, God.
Please, Congressman.
Carlos said something about being united. It's interesting, as we were standing saying the pledge, I thought of something really had not hit me at that point, that we're saying the pledge to a flag, and that every one of us, no matter what we're going through in life right now, no matter how we vote, no matter we are united in that one thing at that moment, that we love a country, that we're willing to pledge our lives, our efforts, our sacrificing. Many folks are supposed to go off to war. That is what's made our country so unique and so different, is that all our differences would come together as we the people when it comes down to our country. And when we talk about what you see here, and I think about folks like Carlos, is a principle that when you have this concept of unity and a purpose, you can educate yourself so you're not going with the winds. It is a powerful thing. You can then be principled, you can be courageous, you can have conversations without having to hit somebody across the head because you believe in time. If you're nice enough, they'll come your way. So education is the foundation of what unity comes down to, because once we understand what we have here, what's so unique about our country, and we pledge to that, then at that one moment, we are truly on the same page, and we have to take that moment and find other things to do the same thing with.
Please, Carrie.
I think that's something that we need to do deliberately. I'm just reminded when my kiddos were in first grade, there was a bunch of little blonde boys and they were playing on a merry-go-round. And they told one boy, "You can't play with us because you don't have blonde hair and blue eyes." And the kid came over to me, and I, instead of flipping out and going, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that these other kids won't let this child play," I just walked over to the child and I said, "Can I play?" And they're like, "Oh yes, Mrs. B, you can totally play," because I'm cool. And so they let me play with them. And I said, "But I have a question, because I don't have blonde hair and I don't have blue eyes." And so we can have these conversations that unify our kids without ever having to yell and shame them, because they're just children. And it's our job to teach these kids. So we have to be intentional in the way that we're talking to them, right? But we can, but we shouldn't. There shouldn't be shame involved in the education. It should be. I do believe that education needs to be intentional. So some people will say, "Oh, I'm not going to come to this event because it's a political event, and you guys are all political." But I don't think that patriotism is political necessarily. Patriotism is a love for your country and a love for your fellow man. And there's something in that that we used to lie about our age if we had to go to war, right? And now we don't even want to get up and eat Cheetos. Like, we don't want to leave the basement. But we used to have courage, we used to have strength, and we used to have a common purpose.
Shitri, I want to address this to you and to Lucy then. But, two great American traits, I would say, are resilience and resolve. And the Congressman mentioned resolve. And I know that when we have our board meetings, and board member Earl will attest to this, when we look at a curriculum, we're looking at, does this promote academic excellence? Will our students really be learning from this? But increasingly, we look at curriculum and say, are we teaching those principles like resolve and resilience? Is it possible to do that? I know you're a counselor, and is it possible to teach resilience and resolve through K through 12, through curriculum? Is your mic on? Is that...
I just have to talk closer.
Okay.
I believe so. Although I am a counselor, I did start subbing a year ago for this reason, because I wanted to know, what are they teaching my children? I wanted to be involved in. I was there. And I think that it is possible. And the way that it's possible is, instead of confusing our children, that we talk about American principles. What are American principles, people think? It's very basic. It's the Bill of Rights. It's the Declaration of Independence. It's the Constitution. And what do those three things entail? They entail liberty. They entail individualism. They entail entrepreneurship. They entail diversity. There's a bigger word for it, and it's called egalitarianism. If you look that up, that sums up what the United States of America stands for, and brings us back to what we've all been talking about here, education. Why, although, my father could have gotten his education in a different country, but we came here to this country and he gained his education here. And it paved a pathway for us children. I got my education here also, but I was being taught American principles at that time. And now, and what's currently happening today, is teachers, school districts are driving away from that and instilling victimism. It's like, why are we talking about being a victim? I can talk about that. She shared a story that I thought about myself. I was a young girl in maybe first grade. Oh no, maybe it was fifth grade. And in elementary, I was using the bathroom, and some American girls kicked open the bathroom door and said, "You're brown, you don't belong here." And that did upset me, but my priority was close the door, finish your business, wash your hands. Yes, even in those times I was germy, but wash your hands. I'm gonna go talk to the principal and talk about what happened here and call my parents. I did. And you know what my parents said? They didn't say, "Poor you." They said, "You are a child of God and you know where you belong." That what they say doesn't matter. So, and they were absolutely right. Even if we don't want to bring religion into this, but they didn't teach me to be a victim of the situation. And I think if that's what we're teaching our children today, oh, we have a cry room for you, we have this or that. And I am in the mental health field, trust me. I understand this. But there is a time and a place for it, and it's not our schools. They are not equipped to teach our children how to deal with mental health issues. There are professions for that, my profession. There's psychiatrists. The school has a school counselor for that reason. So teachers should focus on, and we shouldn't be pressuring teachers to step in and be that. That's asking too much of them. I think most teachers wholeheartedly come into this field to teach American principles. And they're not giving that opportunity now. I mean, there's a great comparison between the former president and the current president. And who is encouraging what? So I think if we can address this confusion, if we can address this confusion by avoiding it and not confusing our children, I think there's hope for them. They won't be confused. They can identify, they can be who they are without someone telling them who they are or confusing them. So not only does it have to do with parenting, as Lucy mentioned, but I think it has a lot to do with how the curriculum is being taught in schools today.
Lucy, let me ask you, thank you, the same question. Can we teach resilience and resolve or principles like that through curriculum?
Yes. I've seen it firsthand. So one of the things that comes up often in school, especially I'm sure in public school as well, but also in college, is I feel bullied and I don't know what to do. And what's happening, at least in our society today, is if you're bullied, well, you're a victim and poor you and sorry, you know, life is against you. Even if it's a story of the blue-eyed blonde hair, I'm like, do you think they get bullied? Of course, everyone gets bullied. But what's happening is people are just liking the feeling sorry for themselves instead of the, I can stand for myself and I don't need to let words affect me. So resilient comes back to the idea of self-confidence, and that's something that I think is lacking in our society, our education, everywhere. We're catering to the I feel sorry for me, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's whatever it may be. And the thing is, when we're doing that, we're not recognizing that everyone always has an issue. Everyone is always bullied at some point in their life, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of religion. And when we're just saying, oh, only this group goes through this, that's not realistic. And it also doesn't give them and empower them to stand against any form of bullying. Recently, I was talking to a student that felt, you know, that she was being bullied by, because she wears, what is it called? Hijab. Yeah, hijab. And I asked her, do you care, or what are the meanings for you? And she told me for her religion and so forth. And I'm like, well, why does it matter what anyone else thinks? Like, you should be caring about your own feelings or your own understandings and not be so influenced by society that's telling you, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and so forth. Anyways, to make the story short, yes, resilience can be taught, and it starts with self-confidence and getting rid of the idea of victimhood and recognizing that everyone can rise and everyone is bullied in some way or form. And it's just the ones who rise above that are the ones who recognize how to deal with those bullies and recognize how to stand up for themselves and recognize that they're not really any different than anyone else.
All right, can you hear me? Okay. I would say yes also. As long as our free market is working, anything we want to have happen as a country can happen because we have innovators. We have people who sit there and they think as teachers. My dad was a teacher for 40 years, a college professor. My mom was a teacher. I know what it is to have people who have a passion. They love it. They would leave other professions to come to this if they could. You let those folks think about how to help this child become more confident, more resilient, more persistent, more tenacious. Allow those teachers to impact those kids, and they will get that. They will be there because they will see the results of what they're trying to put into that child. And that child's move, they're gonna start to see this best practices and share with others. And before you know, we have a whole different school system. So that's why a couple things. Choice is so important. We need to bring the free market back into education. Great teachers should have no limitations to how much money they can make, period. Bad teachers should find something else to do. That's the way the market works, my friends. And the minute we put our kids as the product that we care most about, and will now let anybody mess that product up, then we'll find the best place for that child. And as moms and dads, we know the personality of our kids. I have 6 kids, and my girls, every one of them have their kids doing different things and learning in a different way based on their personality. That's the way it should be. But we have to make sure the product are our kids. We do that and let the free market innovation, let the great teachers who know what they're doing, who put their lives into it, let them go to work and things will happen. That's what we need to do, starting back in Congress and DC, allowing the folks to know how this business, how this industry works, to let them do their job.
Let me direct this question to the Congressman Owens and then to Cari. And I want you two to answer this question. One, I want to talk about Title IX. And for those of you who may have heard this in the news but really don't understand, Title IX is the legislation that said, look, we have to make sure that women are protected in sports. And recently, the Biden administration, through executive action, changed that interpretation so that it would allow non-biological boys and non-biological girls to participate in the league that they identify as. And this has caused a lot of, in a state like Utah, where we have legislation protecting females in their sport, this is in direct conflict with our state law. And Burgess, you were not only an athlete, you were a Super Bowl champion. You understand sports. You understand the power of why we celebrate sports, how it builds community, how it builds character, how it builds things like resilience and resolve. And I was watching the news, and they were showing a highlight of a hearing, and you were, this is my word, but you were just obliterating the Secretary of Education on this issue. And I watched it 3 times. And you talked about your 5 daughters, but I want you to talk about Title IX and not only how it impacts sports, but our communities, our schools. Could you do that?
Absolutely. And by the way, I remember when Title IX came about, because before that, young ladies in high school just didn't have very many options. Either they cheered or they were on drill team. To play baseball, to play basketball, to have the same opportunities to grow, to build those leadership skills, the tenacity, all those things that come from athletics, they were not given an opportunity until that happened. I want you guys to understand what's happening with the hard left, the Marxists. We see it as an attack on women. It's also even more so attack on men. When men do not stand up for women, they're no longer called men, period. They're whiners, weenies, and wimps. Okay? It is amazing to me how what we're accepting now as we see boys beating up on girls, boys winning against girls, and having no shame. We're saying we no longer have to put womanhood at the pinnacle that it should be. My dad went to World War II, and that generation, they did a couple of things to win, but also get the respect of womanhood. You're right. And they used to fudge the age because they didn't want to be left behind. They didn't be the ones that did not go to war, did not fight. There is something about manhood that if we destroy that, we destroy our country. We get guys who do not want to fight for womanhood, do not want to stand up for their culture, will sit back and it's okay to take payments as long as they can keep their jobs. In other words, no principle. We lose that, and we lose the greatest, what's the word I'm looking for? The greatest warriors for freedom. Because we should, as men, be willing to give everything for womanhood, period. And that's the point I made when I was talking to my girls. My girls know that I love them more than life, literally. And they know that I will give it up in a heartbeat. They don't doubt that. Once women know that about their spouse, they know that they have somebody who will be there for them and protect them and provide for them and be their partner. That allows that person, that woman, to be the very best mother, very best partner, because they don't have to worry about fighting off evil themselves. So you have to understand what we're after, guys. I mean, it seems kind of simple, but Marxism is nothing but evil. It's pure evil. They hate the family, they hate faith, they hate us, any of us who can become independent by building a business and saying we don't need you. And that's what we have to make sure we're standing up against. So it's a big fight, but we're about to win. It's 2024. That's what I'm saying. The very first question, this will decide this year on just how much we love freedom, how we get out.
And Cari, for you, I'd like to ask a Title IX question as well. If you're successful and if you're elected to the State Board of Education, I know in last month's board meeting, board member Earl and I had the opportunity of, the whole board did to consider Title IX and how we would address that should there not be an injunction before August 1st. But if you're successful, and Rod, if you're successful, that this is going to fall into your lap, how would you address that Title IX issue?
Okay, I'm going to answer this one and the other question at the same time. We have to not swallow the lie. As long as we swallow the lie, as long as we say things are true that aren't true, whatever that is, we will lose our resolve to ever stand up. So I believe that we're on a precipice and we have to not swallow the lie. We don't get to make the decision. It's a legislative decision. But if it does come into our laps, we know what women are. We know what men are. To quote a somewhat famous movie, it's an adult human female. But can resilience be taught? Absolutely. And here's the thing. When we're teaching resilience, you teach the hero's journey. Everything that saved me, everything that brought me out of the place that I started was books, really great literature. They didn't have to look like me. Sure, it was fine if they did, but they didn't have to look like me. They just had to tell a story that engaged me and made me go, oh, if that person can do that, David Copperfield, if that person can come through this, then I can apply some of those things. Some of those things about that person fit my character. I can do that too. But what we're not doing instead, this is the reason why I'm running, quite frankly. What we're not doing is we're saying, oh, that program looks great and it's all a package deal, so let's go here with this. And we're not going through and making sure that that curriculum lines up with principles that will teach our children to love our country and to be truly resilient. Because what we do is we take the word resilient and we say, oh, you're now resilient because you're able to deal with whatever we've imposed upon you. That makes you resilient. But it doesn't if it requires you to swallow the lie. It only makes you a coward.
Okay, thank you, Cari. I think that's a good place to end my questions. We have about 15, 20 minutes left. I'd like to give you the opportunity to come on up. And do they need to stand anywhere in particular for the video? Right in the middle is fine? Okay. Jamie, you have a question? Okay.
So one of the things that as a business owner, and Congressman Owens, you've kind of touched on this, on free market capitalism, that is everything to me about
America. So how do we teach that into our K through 12? I think if we lose the free market system, if we have, I think we have 50% of our young people embracing socialism. So anyone on the panel that would like to talk about how we teach that in K through 12?
Well, real quick, because I have a perfect example of that. My daughter's first grade class, and I was so proud of her teacher for introducing the children's entrepreneurship program that she was involved in. They were starting to teach children this in classroom, and this is what I mean by American principles. They can do it, and they just need to implement that every day with our children. They can show them, and they did this cute little garage sale, bring your stuff, but make sure it's stuff that you would want to buy too, right? So that's part of entrepreneuring, right? We want to sell items that other people want to, something that's of desire. That's what used to make this country real great. Like, I remember family back in Guatemala, they wanted American-made stuff. That was a big deal. When this teacher decided to do this, I was like, this is amazing. This is right on point with American principles. And I think that's what they should do. They can implement that from the very young age of first grade.
Hear me? Okay, there we go. Just to add with that, I think unity, you already touched a lot on that, but if we could start teaching early years of the importance of patriotism and we are one nation, and I always say we're just one big village and we need to learn to love each other. But to help students recognize anything that they're hearing that's causing a division within their nation, within their community, they need to start questioning that and not each other. So when they start learning that we are on the same team, this is America, and we want to fight for America from a young age, patriotism, understanding that this is a great land. I think they hope in that form. Right now, what's happening is we're teaching the opposite, right? That it's a horrible place, everyone's against you, no one likes you, you're a victim, you're oppressed. Like, that does nothing or does no good for our nation. But when we start recognizing that we can work together, start teaching those values very young, and start questioning those people who are dividing us, if we could really understand our root is we are one big, huge village. And so we need to take care of each other. I think that's when we'll start seeing a big difference.
I think also hope. I think that when you do something small and you realize that this can get you to the next place, you begin to have hope. And I think a lot of our kids, as I said in the beginning, are facing kind of nihilism. They have a kind of nihilistic attitude. Well, what's the point? I'm never going to achieve anything. All of these other people. One of the things I hear a lot of, like, teenagers and people in their 20s say is, I'm never going to own a home. So if we teach them in K-12 things like very basic economics, very basic things about math, but the math is geared towards this is what it's going to take to pay a mortgage. Then I think they will start to have hope. And if they have hope, I believe that they'll, grab that by the horns.
I remember like 4 years ago, something like that, in the State of the State, Governor Herbert, in his speech, he said, like, I signed this bill to allow in the school that we're gonna teach about a free market. And he said, I was there in the Capitol, and he said, like, because nations as a Venezuela, we have seen nations as a Venezuela, rich countries go to Marxists, socialists, and they are totally destroyed. We need to go right to the point. To be honest, you asking me as a survivor of socialism, we need to teach these abominations, these political ideologies in history, because this is happening. The manifesto, the Communist Manifesto, when somebody became socialist or communist, it's not because they find out like a flyer in the street. It's a process to those individuals start becoming socialists and communists. Do you know that here in Utah, and I'm going to talk about college, do you know in the University of Utah, we have a group called the Socialist Party of Liberation, and they sent our kids, college students, to Cuba to be trained. And they publicly say in Facebook, Instagram, everywhere, like nothing, they post that crazy thing about that. And that happened in Venezuela. Chavez starts sending college students to Cuba to get trained. When these people come back to their countries, they are brainwashed, crazy. Do you know, and that's the investigation that is happening right now, do you know that the people who are creating all these pro-Hamas or whatever manifestation in the universities were trained in Cuba? Do you know that? That's another investigation is happening right now. And by the way, one more comment. Governor DeSantis, he created a bill just a month ago to teach the horrors of communism in the schools. Of course, they have Cubans there, but you have a Venezuelan here.
And Cari actually said it. What is the entrepreneur all about? It's a person who's hopeful. It's a person who can one day turn around, and this is what we all need to do more of, my friends. The most powerful 9 words that we can tell one American to another: if I can do it, you can do it. Because I tell you about the entrepreneur, they've gone through it. They've gone through the ups and downs. Somewhere in their teaching, they were taught to hold on to that dream, to fight for it. And guess what happens when that entrepreneur comes out of that process? Probably the most empathetic people we have in this country. Not probably, the most empathetic, the most faithful, the most wanted to bring other people with them, the most legacy building will be those folks who build a business and build a remarkable middle class. So the attack we have right now, if you really want to know why there's these crazy things going on, the hard left knows that the only way to defeat our country is from within: destroy the middle class. How do you destroy the middle class? Stop the business owners, make them hopeless, make them quit. You do that, you have a dark hole in our nation. You have elitists, big group, and big group of dependents. You want to go to any country where you see misery, that's where you'll find it. Venezuela, that's what you'll find it. So I said this years ago, this is the only country that does not teach our own system of capitalism, of economics. Well, choice gives us that option. If those public schools don't want to do it, leave it to some innovative teachers. They will do it. And our kids will put them in that school in a heartbeat. They'll come out of there productive with great outcomes. And those schools who don't want to do it will go out of business. Those who want to keep it going, they will continue to grow and prosper. And that's what we need to have in this country. So that goal, by the way, by this new Congress coming in with a bigger majority, with the Senate that we own, that we now control the Republican Party and Donald Trump, these things will happen, my friends. This is what's on the horizon. Because now we know. We had no idea these guys were after us and after our kids all these decades. All it took was COVID, October 7th, BLM riots. Now we know. I tell you, it's nothing worse for the left than Americans figure it out and we get together. And as Al Davis, just win, baby. That's what we do. So.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, so this is a piggyback question kind of hers. The rising generation is who we're kind of focusing on, K through 12. But what we have is we're talking about 2024 being a pivotal moment. And we have a huge group of voters, 18 to 35, who want to be a part of something. And the narrative on the other side seems more persuasive because it's a utopia. What is the pathway forward to help those 18 to 35-year-olds who will be the deciding factor if we will jump off the precipice or we will back away from it? What message are we going to give that generation, not the rising, the voters, 18 to 35? What message are we going to give them that's going to counteract this utopia that actually leads to destruction?
I'm going to make it real quick here. It's already happening. Americans cannot go through so much misery and pain before they wake up and say, "I'm just tired of this." It's not within our DNA to lie down and just take it. And that's what the left has not understood. We're having more of an uprising with young people. Now, they might not understand the bigger picture, but they know they can't afford anything. They know they can't look at getting a house. They know that their dream level is going down, and they don't want that either. So all we have to do is just let's make sure we do this, guys, unlike the left. Let's make sure we're positive, we're patient. If we don't agree with us, that's okay. Just befriend them and give them time. It took me years, a few years, 3 or 4 years, to become from being a Democrat to Republican, because my friends allowed me to grow, allowed me to make my decisions. And then once I got there, guess what? I'll never go back. Never, never, never. So I'll say this. The perfect plan is Americans are waking up. Our kids are realizing what it is not to have hope and to see this craziness going on. Black community is waking up. They realize they've been in a thumb for way too long. They said enough of this. Hispanics they're waking up. No more. No masks. Is that a word? No masks. The American Jewish people, they never knew what was happening until October 7th. Now they get it. They want changes in the educational system because they realize that's where it all began. So it's happening, to say the least.
Can you hear me? Okay. I would say education is the big one. If we could somehow educate them to recognize what they're signing up for, even the basics, like I can't even begin to tell you how basics a lot of like 18 to 35-year-olds do not know. I've had conversations with them just asking literally, what is socialism? No one knows, but they're supporting it. And the moment I say something like, well, do you like the idea that we all will have to split the same amount of money equally, even if I sit at home and do nothing and you go to work every day? And they're like, of course not. And I'm like, well, that's what you're supporting. And so when they hear that, they're like, wow. And I think if we could just try to somehow educate them, really, honestly, I can now begin to tell you basics. Sometimes we shoot too far for them and we lose them. But if we could just come down to a very lower level, because it's not being taught at school, it's not being taught anywhere, and help them recognize those things, then when they're hearing these politicians who are saying something that sounds a little like socialism, then they're like, I don't think I want to support that. But again, I would say education. Education is the key to a lot of things, but that one is, I think it's huge.
You know, the truth. When you are listening your every Sunday, you go to your church and you listen amazing, incredible men who are your spiritual leader, pastors, bishops, state president, or who is your leader, talking about principles, talking about God and all these things, and this repetition, and it is this principle. You start learning those principles because they preach about it and you start putting in practice those principles. And it's happening with democracy, it's happening with freedom. And that's why we need to become preachers of the truth. You have to tell your kids, because if you talk to my 13-year-old kid, he's a student body president in his middle school, and if you talk about him, about America, about why socialism, he know everything. He's a well. We try to teach Carlos that what happened to us as a political asylist, and also he is another preacher of the truth. We need to start having those deep conversations with our kids in home about how beautiful is America. And I had a slogan, and they said like, America is not a dream, America is a miracle, and everything about this country is a miracle. If you see the United States Constitution, this document was created 200 years ago to guide that society, and 200 years later is guiding the society. That's a totally miracle. Venezuela has 27 constitutions and 5 different republics, and this document is so beautiful. I can tell you more and more and more, but this country is a miracle. And you have so many good stories to tell your kids and to tell your family about the beauty of being American.
I think it comes down to purpose. if we give the kids purpose. So what I've been doing is I take the things that I see and I go to like YAF and other college groups and I talk to them and I say, you are the people. You are the ones who can save your siblings because you're still cool enough that they'll listen to you. But really, if we give them purpose, think about all of the slogans, all of the kind of activism that we see out there. It's always something matters, something matters, something matters. These kids are dying to matter. And so if we look at them and say, hey, you have purpose. I know that in the classroom, that's as simple as taking the kid who has crazy behaviors and saying, hey, will you help me clean off the chalkboard or the whiteboard? They love it. They love it, and they suddenly become your favorite person. That's what our kids need. We're in a place where our kids are depressed. They really are struggling. And I do believe that that has been fed to them in a lot of cases. It has been fed to them because if you don't think, if you don't feel this need to be productive, you just fall into a slump. So if we want to help our kids, we have to give them purpose. We have to help them become mentors for the next generation. We can show them that, hey, you guys, you are the ones who can advocate for your change. Your change. I'm sorry, I'm getting passionate, but that's because I'm an educator and that's what I do. But your change is not the change that somebody told you that you have to impose on someone else. You have to know it for yourself. And the way we know that for ourselves is we look at each person and we say, you have purpose and you matter just because you're you, not because of your gender, not because of your race, nothing else. You just individually matter. And I think that that's the message that our kids need to hear over and over again.
Sure. Right on par with that. What I was going to say is, although you mentioned 18 to 35, how are we going to get there? It is very important teaching K through 12 these American principles. But if we're going to target the 18 to 35, what are we going to discuss? Sorry, I need to remember to hold this closer, is how important voting is. How many graduates have left school and not know the value? You know what? I will tell you because I seen it in my own family and I was furious when they said, I wrote Uncle so-and-so in for president. I said, what in the did you just do? That was a wasted vote. Because I am telling you, if we tell this population 18 to 35, your vote is Willy Wonka's golden ticket. If you want to become successful in this country, whether you're going to do it through hard work or you're going to be a YouTuber, that's still hard work, I guess, right? But the opportunity is here in this country. And if we're going to teach that population that, then we're going to say, do you value yourself? Do you value the American dollar? Then you're going to put the work into it. And what does that entail? Research it yourself. Don't take my word for it. Research it yourself and see who you want to vote for. See who's going to support your idea of freedom, your idea of liberty, your idea of entrepreneurship, your idea of diversity. And when I say diversity, I think of one person back in 2020 at the RNC. His name was Maximo Alvarez. He was the CEO, or is the CEO and founder of Sunshine Gasoline. And I believe he is from Cuba. He said something that hit me real hard. If we lose this country, what other country can we turn to? There is no other country. It is here, the United States of America, that makes dreams come true. And that's why people flee here. And this is what the population 18 to 35 need to understand. People are coming here for what we have the privilege of living every day. And yesterday we paid tribute to the warriors who fought for the liberty that we breathe freely today. But we're going to lose it if we're not teaching 18 to 35. So amongst our family, if they didn't get it in the school education, which they need to, teachers, if you're listening, please teach the value of voting. Again, the Willy Wonka golden ticket. And let them know that This is the American dream that you're not going to find anywhere else. No matter how much we love our country, it's never going to be what was founded here, because the founding fathers did what? They established our country to be free and less government involved, right? That we are dictators of our own life. That what they founded was a guideline. And what we saw over the last 4 years, as Burgess mentioned, COVID impacted what? The majority, the middle class. And how? And this is what 18 to 35 need to know, is it attacked the middle class, businesses were closed, and who thrived? The ones who were not middle class. And is that what you want? Absolutely not.
Let's just take, just want to do 2 more questions. You were patient, and then I'm going to turn the table. So Pastor Rod is running for the school district in Davis County, and people get to ask him questions all day. And so I want to give him the privilege of asking the last question to the panel. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about it, but let's do this.
We know that one of the things that socialists, Marxists, communists want to do is destroy the family. And we talk a lot about what's happening in schools with them keeping information from parents. And we appropriately address the parents' rights. But can you explain how that affects the child when they're told not to share with their parents, whether it's personal information or issues that they're taught from curriculum? I know, Lucy, especially, you talked about it's the parenting that makes the difference in resolve and resilience. So how do we fight that from our side? But how is it affecting the child? What do we need to be looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this goes back to that connection that we want with our kids from the very beginning, where they feel comfortable and safe enough and secure enough to be able to come and say, you know, today I was told in class or in counseling, whatever it may be, that I can do whatever I want, but I'm not supposed to tell you. Parenting, again, where you're creating that strong relationship and a safe place, which does start incredibly early. I don't think people recognize how early the brain starts learning how to trust its people or its environment. And when it's learning that during those first 5 years of life, we see it pretty consistent. What's happening now is parents are putting their kids on TV. They're just watching TV all day or on their iPads. Parents are busy themselves on iPads. Parents are being taught, don't worry about those needs as long as you're just doing the basic stuff, food, shelter, whatever it may be. Let them cry. Who cares? You know, it creates them strong or makes them strong. That is not true at all. The more you lean in as a parent, the more softer you are to them, the more vulnerable you are to them, the more safer they feel, and the more they feel like they could trust you to come in this safe place that they feel. But when we're putting this whole front of, you need to be strong and be, I can't be soft with you. The world isn't soft. Well, they are just teaching them that you're not soft. And so they're not going to come to you. But when you're able to create, again, that safe environment, I think that relationship can happen, and then they can recognize, that person is pushing me away from the place I feel safe. I'm not doing that. But if they're not feeling safe at home and they have somebody else at school, whatever it may be, that's telling them something else, of course they're going to take that route. But if we could give power again to the parents and family and recognizing the influence there and just creating that safe environment, I think that's huge.
I think we also have to recognize, again, the intentionality. When we stop using terms like mom and dad and we start saying you're one person, or when we start saying things like we're going to have breakfast served at school, which they have to do now. So those kind of things break away the family and connection. And when we take away that family connection, then kids are more moldable to other ideas. They're more susceptible to other ideas. When I grew up, and I lived in 18 different foster homes in 9 years, so I did not have that connection with people. And And for me, it worked out because I'm really stubborn and I was able to kind of figure things out. But for especially our younger kids, they are so vulnerable, and that is intentional. The one thing that I did that I don't know if I would call it a hobby, but I'm very interested. I've spoken to Carlos and other people who've escaped communism and socialism, and that destroying of the family. I think one thing that we haven't touched, that in terms of what it really does, what we're doing right now is we are queering education. That does not mean that we're anti-gay or lesbian. It means that we are taking their minds, and if you were to Google the word queer, you would find that it means to ruin. So we are ruining all sense of truth. We are ruining, and when we ruin truth, I'm trying not to be religious here, but when we ruin truth, you ruin hope. And then you just have very useful, the only word I have for it is pawns. That's why we have to fight. We can't know these things and not absolutely stand up, because it's our children on the front line.
Thank you. Pastor, did you have a comment?
Just think about this. And again, I'm old school, grew up in the 60s. And the fact we're even having a conversation, the option that some stranger can tell you not, give them the right to tell your kid not to be honest with their parents. You know, what world is that? That's communism to its core. You strip that child from the true person who knows that person, that child, who cares for him. Again, that's destruction of the family unit. But then, too, we talk about different truths. We also talk about what is a man and what is a woman. Where did that come from? So just know it doesn't stop. Just know that if we allow this to continue to happen, allow the lie to be perpetuated, that's not going to stop. This is why you right now are at the forefront, because we the people can make a decision. This ends right now. Now we know. Or we can just be so busy and just let things go along. We should not be surprised at the results. This is our moment, my friends. This is really it. All this crazy stuff that we're saying, what in the world are they talking about? Well, we need to get some of those folks fired. Get them to do something else. Get them away from our kids, number one. Have them go do some other profession, but not teach our kids if that's the way they want to move things along.
Thank you. Last question, Rod Hall.
Well, this has been great tonight. It really has, and I appreciate everybody who's come and given input. Thinking about this question, it's really something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's come up. It's kind of been the underlying tone of what's been talked about here tonight. We know the importance of coming together. I don't think that we move the needle forward until we figure out how to come together. And this is a beautiful place. Utah's a beautiful place. There's no place like it, I don't believe, in our country. And Congressman Owens, he said specifically, we could be on the cutting edge of all this that takes place, really seeing great change come in our country through what happens in this state. We have division, people trying to bring divisive ideologies through race. I've never seen it like I have before now. Like I have before now. Parents and teachers, all these different ways to try to divide us. And so my question is this: how do we come together? What are the steps? And I know it's a tough question, but we're talking about it. And I believe that this is how we come to the conclusions, as we begin to talk about the things that need to be spoken about. So here we are on this panel in this room with people that feel the same way, that have the same heart, that want to go in the same direction. What are the steps that we take to move forward in coming together?
Well, let me just start off. This is where it starts. It starts with Americans being engaged. It starts with us coming out of a little freedom bubble that we all love to live in, where we think about our kids, our memories and vacation, and that's what we want. We want to be there. But it comes out when we start to realize there's something so much more important, our legacy, our children, our future. And we start having conversations. I tell you, no matter what party we're part of, those things we all have, those who really care, those are truly good people. We all have that same thing in common. So I would say the first thing is get engaged and start having these conversations. This is probably the most, no doubt in my mind, the most important thing to put your talents on the field. Your talent might be doing what we're doing right now. We've decided to kind of step up. Many of us have never thought about doing this before. Your talent could be as simple as that person that walks in the room and people smile. Because that's the person that someone has questions about, will not have any problems coming up and asking and getting a conversation because they know they're going to be treated fairly. Whatever that talent is, use it. This is a time, and I'll say this, my friends, I've never been more optimistic than I am today because we make the right decisions, we do our part. This time next year, we'll be having totally different conversations about how we get our country back and get more options, more choices. So we have to look at it that way.
I think one of the great things that the liberal or the left is doing is creating a false idea of welcoming, love, acceptance, kindness, whatever, all those things. And it's the, oh, no one accepts you, I accept you, and plus follow us, follow, this, whether it's communism or Marxism, whatever, ideologies. So I think as a nation, and again, we've already discussed with family in the home and so forth, but if we could create an environment where we feel safe around each other, and of course the liberal loves using that word safe, but in other words, just recognizing that we need, if we want to educate, for example, our kids, are we being kind, or are we just saying, how dare you do that? That's the worst thing you could do. What were you thinking? Are we making time for connection, whether it's with our family or whether it's our neighbors? We want to see a shift. We need to create relationship with people. They feel trust and they could listen to whatever that we have to say. But if we're just going to walk in and say, oh gosh, I used to be like this. Don't judge me for a second, but when I started recognizing that I was lied to a lot of my life, and I was supporting people I didn't want to and people that didn't even follow my values, I started posting a lot on Facebook, and anyone that disagreed with me, I just went off, and I was like, you are so lost, you make no sense, and I just gave them a hard time, and that didn't win anyone over. And then over the years, I finally learned, I was like, wait a second, I got to create a relationship, I got to be kind, I got to be soft, I got to make room for understanding. And that has just been so huge. And again, I think all of us are searching for that connection. We're searching, we do want that peace, we want unity. And so unfortunately, a lot of our kids are being told, this is where unity is. It's here, this safe place. But we could create our safe place in the home, in our education, in those areas, and just by being kind and again, creating those relationships. Again, not thinking it as a form of weakness. I think that's where liberals are outshining us, is by creating that fake kindness with a little twist of hell, sorry to say. But they don't realize, they don't see the hell part, they just see the kind part. But we are the kind, and we are thinking of the future, and we are worried for our future generation, and we want the best for them. But we need to recognize, we need to step it up on that part. Yes.
Quickly, I'll say you hit it right on the nail on the head. I want to say the Mr. Miyagi hit the nail in the fence, because Utah is the leading state in the United States for unity, because we are a goodwill people. We are opened. We are willing to be open to discussion. And this is what I love Cari for, running for Utah State School Board, because she is willing to have these open dialogues. And this is how we build unity. Not closing the doors, opening the doors. Bring it on. Let's talk. Let's talk. And that's what Utah does great. They build united. And this is their success. And it's funny, because if you talk to people from other states and they move here, and I always ask, why? Why Utah? And they will tell you, the kind people that live in this state. It's a safe place to raise my children. They will say, and it is part of the problem. And then we don't want them to change it, right? So then we instill it and we say, you love it so much, let's keep it this way and keep that dialogue opened. But I think the next important thing is focusing on your question, which brings unity, is family, the nuclear family. And what can we do to preserve that and bring unity together? I will tell you the number one secret for everything: reading. Reading. Read together as a family. Read together with your neighbor. Read together in your group, your social groups. Not only does it help the youngsters, but even the elderly, as they diminish, what helps them? Reading. And what does reading do? It brings unity. If we're all on the same page and we're reading together, the same dialogue, we're going to create that unity.
Wait, okay. I think it's intellectual humility. I think that when we come to the room, we don't think that we have all of the answers. We're willing to listen. And even if people slander us, even if people come after us and say, and are just mean, we respond with grace. Even if that person doesn't respond or isn't moved, other people, especially if it's on social media, other people who are watching will go, wait a second, that person's not responding the way I thought they would be. They're actually genuine. And having those genuine relationships, also something that I love, and yes, Carolyn's in the room, but I still love this thing, which is that we are supposed to assume goodwill. Always assume that the person, what I try to think when people are vicious or you have no idea what you're talking about, or et cetera, I just think they know not what they do. And if we can give them that, they don't know yet, because it's growth mindset, right? Yet. We always remember the word yet. Wherever they are, they could be moved along from that. So I believe that that's how we bring about unity. We have to realize that there's such a push to make us as tribal and divided as possible. And it actually takes constant work to not be that way. But we have to commit to it, because it's not just about us. It's the world that we're giving our kids. And it's very short time, the world we're giving our kids.
Just, Carlos, did you?
I love to talk. No, like I said before, preachers, we need to be preachers of the truth. When I was in Venezuela in the law school, we had a situation that the socialists take over the media. During those times, we didn't have Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. We had just the regular channels, and they took over all the narrative. For example, believe me or not, in one moment you felt in Venezuela that if you are not a socialist, you are a bad person. Like it's all day, every day, the president, everybody telling you the socialism is good, and teaching you that El Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, and all these crazy murderers are good people. Good example for our people. That's why being preacher of the truth anytime in your home, everywhere. One more example. I was thinking about the west side of where I live in Salt Lake County. The west side from Magna to Harriman. We have West Valley, Kearns, all these areas, 7 cities, beautiful cities. But I realized that many communities are totally disconnected with the rest of the community, especially the Latino community. And I said, wow, how can I teach these people, or how can I educate these people or inform these people about what's happening in the country? Because even if you believe me or not, some minorities communities, they are totally disconnected with the rest of the community because the language, the culture, many things. And I had a brilliant idea. I was like, well, maybe what I'm gonna do is visit pastors and telling them what happened in the country. Sit down with them and educating them. Look, this is in the children books. And when I start doing that, create a movement in the West Side, and we have more than 100 pastors, Latino pastors, educated, informed about what happened in the school, what happened in the country, what is this crazy ideology. And believe me, they totally, it's abomination. They totally don't like this in any way. That's why, like Congressman Owens said, we need to be engaging Americans and telling them what happened in the country, because many people, we are busy, everybody's busy, try to make it, put food in our tables, that's honestly, that's the reality. But we need to educate everybody. We need to put our efforts to be preachers of the truth.
Thank you. Before we thank the panel and thank our host for tonight, I just wanted to share two thoughts. One, when you leave here tonight, you're going to go home. You're going to tuck your kids into bed. You're going to have a nice conversation with your spouse. You'll probably be 30 minutes into your dream. And I'll still have another hour drive back to Ogden. Okay? The only thing that gives me hope is that Jenny Earl will still have another hour and a half before. But I want to say thank you to our panel, but I know that Jamie wanted just to share an observation or thought, and then we'll wrap up.
So I just wanted to clarify Path Forward Utah. We are elevate conservative voices, but we also recognize that we need a balance. I mean, I think the world's gone way too far to the left, and so we're trying to shift it back to the right. But we've got to be careful, because there are good reasons that we have liberal and conservative, and that proper pushback on each other is very important. And so I think we can reach out to our neighbors and our friends, and we can have these conversations to find out what are the problems your community is going through, what are the problems your family's going through, and we'll find that, there's we have a lot in common, and we can find those solutions together. So I really believe community, especially at the lowest levels, is where we're going to save our nation, but we have to be willing to have those hard conversations. And even though I'm very much part of an organization that are trying to nudge us back to the right, I don't want to see this pendulum swing way over here, because we'll just be in just as bad of a position as we are right now. So we've got to find a way to work with our neighbors and friends, our relatives, to get this little medium, so we're not swinging this pendulum back and forth. So I'll just encourage all of y'all to have the courage, have the humility, to have the hard conversations, and not feel that we're always right either, because there's definitely some things that we are blindsided on, or we're kind of, not maybe aware of. So we can have a lot more awareness ourselves, but obviously our organization does uplift conservative thought and conservative principles, because we feel that is how we can help a lot of communities that are in need. So anyway, that I just wanted to kind of say, I think there's a beauty in both, and but that's going to bring us together as Americans as we reach out and try to have those conversations and find where that nice the pendulum should be for a while. So I hope, Joe, and I hope y'all don't mind, but I have just one last question, because I really feel that this has been a crucial part of why our children are suffering so much from depression, and what's divided us so much, and it kind of ties it in. But I look back and I thought, where did our nation start going so divided? And it started out on this idealism that we're going to destroy, as humans, we're going to destroy the world through global warming, global coral, whatever they want to call it. And we pushed this ideology off on our children. And we didn't push it off with solutions, that there's something we can really do that's going to change the direction that we're going in. So I'd just like maybe finish off. I guess Joe can get the final word, but if each of y'all want to talk about that, we'll just quickly on how we can present problems that we have that students ought to be aware of, but how we can present it and finding positive solutions without saying that they shouldn't start a family because the world's going to end, or they're contributing something bad to our world by starting a family.
I'll start with that one. I always tell people when they talk about being depressed or things, that you start a garden. If I don't win the primary, that's immediately what I'm going to do, is go out and start a giant garden. And I know people would say, "Oh, don't say that, you jinx it." But when you start a garden, you think you have hope in the future. You think, "Oh, well, next week I might have some sprouts coming out. Next week, I might have this. And especially for our younger children, all they need is that hope. Instead of being told, this is the end. If you don't do X, this is the end. Talk about, we wonder why we have mental health crises. And it's not the only reason, of course, but it's at least one reason. There are kids going to bed at night thinking, this is the end. So we have to do whatever we can always in our literature, it's crazy to say in our math because our math should be so straightforward, but it's not. In our science, in everything, we need to have some way of looking forward and going, how do we, what progress can we make? Because if we have progress, we have hope.
I'll make it really short. That's a really great question, Jamie. I couldn't help but to think of how the brain works during difficulty or just difficult times. The brain loves equilibalance or equilibrium. It likes to feel safety. And if it doesn't get that, well, first, if it doesn't have that in its society, it just adapts. So there's no safety, I don't feel safe, okay, I adapt to that. The moment it gets a taste of safety, it craves it, it wants it, and it goes after it by like, I can't even express to you, because it likes feeling safe. So I'm going to try to make this really short. What's happening today, sorry, is what's happening today is we have a society where people are creating a safe or a fake safety. And a lot of people are gravitating towards the fake safety. So we as a society need to stop and see that our past generation maybe didn't go about things so well and didn't handle things so well and so forth. And with your asking with the mental illnesses and so forth, it's on a rise because people feel chaotic and they're feeling a little taste of something good, and that good isn't fulfilling that need that they're searching for. That need they're searching for is equilibrium, is balance. So as a nation or as a community or as a people, we need to step back, evaluate ourselves, evaluate our past, and step up as more healthier people. Because what's happening now is people are putting on a lot of good shows of what healthy and happiness looks like. And people are falling for that trap left and right. But there's a lot of good research out there to help us be in a healthier mental state. And we can show up well for our kids, for our community, for our friends, for our neighbors. And guess what? People gravitate towards that. Because again, the brain gravitates towards peace, balance, equilibrium. So for a hope for our future, starts with you. Starts with you being a healthy person. People will naturally gravitate towards you. We'll seek out more information about what you believe, even including politics.
I have one word. What is a good communicator? Because you said, how are we going to have that open communication? How are we going to build that? Well, it's 2 words. The best communicator is a good listener. And I want to give a shout out to those young kids who sat here and listened. You were great listeners, and this is how it begins. Be a good listener. Hear what the other people have to say. And then the dialogue begins and the engagement. It's not doom or gloom. There's plenty of hope. That's what this country is based on, is hope.
Thank you for coming.
Mine is really short. Hope and humbleness. Those 2 things. We keep ourselves hopeful. We continue to move forward one step at a time. We keep ourselves humble. That means we know we don't know everything. And boy, we can get some of our kids to get that. It'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Anyway, so all right, that's it.
Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank Carolyn Sherrod again for opening up APA, this school, for us to be here tonight. Thank you for that, Carolyn. A round of applause, please. Thank you. And also to our panel. And don't forget, they stressed voting, and it really comes down to making that informed choice, not only for yourself, but then making sure you tell your family and friends to get out and vote. So thank you.